Hi folks, welcome back to the shop here at Project Pine Hills. Today we're talking about this Channellock 8.5 inch 368 LTX lineman pliers. You can see they're 100% made in the USA of US forged steel. Quick look at the back, you can pause the video and check that out. You can see the cutting edges are laser heat treated so they last longer and has a lifetime warranty. Let's check it out. Now most of you are familiar with the standard 9-inch pair of lineman pliers. Here's a pair from Knipex. They're a great pair of pliers. I have what I like even better, my personal favorite, the Klein 9-inch pliers. These are the HD 213 9NEs. That's the New England style pliers. Very nice pair of pliers. But then a few months ago, I was talking with Doc at Last Best Tool, and he really liked these 7-inch pair of lineman pliers. You can see they're much smaller than the standard 9-inch, much lighter, and they play a whole different role. They're not a replacement for the 9-inch pair, it's just another option to have. But then I got to thinking, is there any options in between? Here we have an 8-inch pair of the Klein lineman pliers. This is the D213 8NEs, so the only difference is this is the 8-inch pair of these pliers, and if you look at the two, you'll see that there is just that 1-inch difference in the length of the pliers at the handle. If you check out the head of the pliers, you'll see that they're exactly the same size. You're basically getting the same head on these pliers regardless of which size you get. There's not a whole lot of difference there. And these are a great pair of 8-inch pliers, but I was working with someone doing some fencing work and they had an older version of these Channellock 368 pliers. And I asked why they used them. They said they liked them because they were a less bulky pair of pliers. But you'll notice if I compare them to these Kleins, you'll see they are quite a bit smaller. You can see they're not as wide as the Klein pliers on top. Quite a bit smaller, quite a bit lighter. All right, let's compare the height of these Klein pliers with the Channellocks. You can see that the Klein is just a little bit taller again, so a little bit bigger pair of pliers. I think it's good that the Channellocks are smaller. We're going for that when we go for the smaller option. There's a quick comparison of the teeth on these two pliers. You see the Channellock's cross hatching goes back a little bit farther. The Klein's crosses right about here. And then you have a smooth portion on the pliers. There's a quick view from the front. You can check them out there and see that a little bit smooth there on the part of the Klein linemans. And in fact, if we take these, we compare them to the 7-inch pair of Kleins, right? Let's do that. And you'll see they're very similar. The 7-inch pair of Kleins are just a little bit narrower, but they're almost identical. And my thought was that this gives you a little bit of difference or a delta between the 9-inch pair, right? You have your big 9-inch pair of Kleins that you gotta have, but then you have a smaller option that fits in the tighter spaces. If I put these together, you'll see just like the 8-inch pair, there's quite a bit of difference there. They weigh less, they're smaller, they fit in the tighter spaces. And I also like the high leverage design. The Channellock has this small rivet that's close to the cutting edge, and that means that the center pivot here is very close to that cutting edge. That's very much a high leverage design of these pliers. You can see these Knipex pliers also have that very small rivet design, just like the Channellocks. Right there's a center point in the rivet, very close to the cutting edge. And you can see compared to that 8-inch Klein, there's quite a bit of difference there. So in fact, if we take these Channellocks and we compare it to the 7-inch version of the Kleins, you can see they're very similar. The Channellock's just a little bit wider. So if you're looking to get some variety in your lineman pliers, I think the Channellock 8-inch is a good way to go. You're getting something that's lighter, it's smaller than the Klein. Let's compare the weights of these real quick. This is the 8-inch pair of Kleins. We'll put them on here. They come in at 15.1 ounces. All right, we'll check the Channellock. Channellock is 15.1 ounces, so about a 2-ounce difference. So lighter pair of pliers for doing lighter work. And this gives you another option over that 7-inch pair, right? You get a little more leverage, a little more size. What I think is good is that this has a head size that's not much different than the 7-inch pair of Kleins, right? So you get a high leverage design. These Kleins don't have a high leverage design because of the placement of that rivet, but you get a high leverage design here and a pair of pliers that aren't that much bigger. We put them here beside each other. You can see there's the height difference, but you get that smaller head size in this pair of Channellocks that you're looking for. Again, we're trying to get a difference here, a delta between these two, so they feel different. We don't want them to feel the same, like you'll notice with the 8 and the 9-inch Kleins. They feel very similar. There's really no difference there. To me, this Channellock gives you an option that's very similar to this 7-inch style. But looking at these 368s, you can see they have very nice knurling here in the jaws. They have the cross hatching there, good cutting knives. So they're also serrated here in the back, right, for pulling cable. All right, let's see how these cut. I've got some 12 gauge Romex here. I'm gonna make sure we get that all the way in the very back there. Oh, it just cuts through it like butter. Yeah, you can feel that high leverage design. Same way you can on that Kleins. And it's a nice quiet sound. That's what I'm looking for when I do this, right? I don't want that snapping sound that some pliers do, like the Knipex, because to me that just reflects that they have snap in the handles when they shouldn't. Nice quiet sound. To me, that's a sign of a good pair of pliers, that the handles have been properly treated and there's no snap in the pliers, less hand fatigue as you use them all day. But when you cut with these Knipex pliers, and I've talked about this before on the channel, but you'll notice here that it's gonna make a snapping sound. It's gonna eject out the wire. See that? That's the difference. I'll do it one more time here so you can hear the difference. Get it in there. Cuts it well, just makes a loud snapping sound. Now, if we try that with these Klein pliers, put this in here. Cuts through very quiet, very clean. Doesn't make that loud noise. That's because Klein uses several different methods to harden their pliers. First, they heat treat the entire pliers, but then they use targeted hardening for the knives and for these handles. So they engineer out the snap in the handles. That's what makes these Kleins better than the Knipex, in my opinion. Let me try this high leverage Klein. Let's see how that goes. Yeah, it cuts pretty good. A little more snap on the Klein. I'm feeling that. Definitely. A little more snap there. Do one more time there. Yep, a little more snap. A little harder to do that, but a little harder to cut with those. Let's go back to the Channellock here. Yep. A little more high leverage design. It's a great feeling pair of pliers. They feel great in the hand. And when I was looking into these, I was trying to see if there was a 7-inch pair of the Channellocks. Well, they're out of production right now. But I did find on eBay, I bought the Channellocks that are 7 inches long, okay? These are actually a vintage pair of pliers. It was new old stock. You can see these are the 347. That last digit there, that 7 is the size of the plier. So this is the 7-inch pair of Channellocks. Not currently in production. Doesn't mean Channellock won't make them again. But this is also made in the USA. You can see they have Meadville, Pennsylvania, USA right there on the pliers. And a larger rivet here as well. But these are very similar to the Klein pliers. If we compare these two together, the Klein 7-inch, if you look at the nose on the two of these, they're very much the same in the terms of the width of these two pliers. You see the front end there's got a similar style and design. Side by side, you can see they're very much alike. But I do like these Channellocks. Now, when I got these, they were a little bit stiff, but I work with them. I lubricate them at 4 points. 1 point on each side, and right here at the top of the mouth, and of course in the back. And I just work these pliers for a little bit. And when I do that, I pull up on this handle and I push down on this one as I work them open and close, and then I alternate. I start pulling up with this handle and pushing down with this one. Open and close them. Before you know it, they're broken into where they would fall open, but they were sticky when I first got them. That is something to know, is you can lubricate and get these pliers moving with a minimal amount of work. So they now open up perfectly. There's no play when I move those handles, but like I said, they're not currently in production, but I think you have a great option here in this 8.5-inch pair of these 368s. In fact, you could argue it's better because the 368, a little bit larger pair of pliers. You've got this high leverage design with where this rivet is and the distance between that cutting edge and here. Just a great design. Again, you have a feel of that 7-inch pair of pliers, right? Look at the head there on them. You can see this 8-inch pair is very much similar to the 7-inch pair. So it's like two different ways that these companies approached it, right? Klein, when they made their 8-inch pair, they just made it sort of patterned after the 9-inch pair. But then Channellocks made their 8-inch pair, they made it more after the 7-inch pair, right? So I think it gives you more of a difference between the pliers. So I think a good way to go is this 9-inch pair of Klein pliers, and then an 8.5-inch pair of Channellocks or a 7-inch pair of these Kleins. And that's going to give you a difference here between the pliers, right? You get for different jobs, right? You have this smaller head on this plier. It's going to reach into tighter spaces. It's lighter, fits in the pocket better. It's great for lighter gauge wire, lighter work. And it's just a feel difference, right? If it's something you want, I know a lot of people like the feel of these smaller pliers, just like Doc was saying with the 7-inch pair of Kleins. He was talking about these potentially being the plier of the year, right? He liked the padded grips. I like these better. Of course, Snap-on also has a pair of 7-inch pliers, and I've got these as well on eBay, and they aren't the latest model, but they do have a higher leverage design. If you look, you'll notice that the rivet is a little bit closer to the cutting edge. Not a whole lot of difference. There's about a 3mm difference between these Kleins and this Snap-on. It's 12mm on the Klein. It's 9mm from this center point to the cutting edge on the Snap-on. So these are a higher leverage design on the Snap-on, but I think the better way to go for most folks, of course, is going to be these Kleins, right? You're not cutting super heavy gauge wire with these pliers anyway. I think this is an excellent way to go for the 7-inch. Now, another thing I got with these when I bought them on eBay is it also came with this 7-inch pair of diagonal cutters from Channellock. You can see here it's the number 337. Again, that's last number 7 is for the length. Now, these also came and were sticky. And these definitely don't fall open. If I grab this handle, you see it's not going to fall. If I push it, they're very, very sticky. Now, I lubricated them and tried to break them in. I didn't have the same luck I did with the Lineman pliers. Probably could work with some more and get that, but they're very, very sticky pair of pliers, unfortunately. But you can see sometimes pliers will come like this. That's why I like to be able to check out pliers before I buy them, to pick a pair that is not quite as tight or as sticky as these are. But again, they can be broken in. Of course, they make some special lubricant that's designed just for breaking in pliers, and I'm sure that might help. I may try that with these. Now, when I was looking at that old version of pliers I saw and trying to get the newer version, I noticed there was a couple options for this. There was this 368 model here, but then also a 348 model. I tried to order the 348s, which I think are a little bit shorter, but both times I ordered those, they ended up just shipping the 368 instead. So I don't know that the 348s are still available. Now, these pliers are not sticky at all. They do fall right open. You just shake them a little bit. You can see that handle falls right down. They're not a sticky pair of pliers. When I ordered the 348s and the 368 came instead, there were a couple of those that were a little bit sticky, but this particular pair, it falls right open. All right, folks, there you have it. That's just a quick look at these Channellock 368 pliers and comparing them to the other plier sizes. I'll have a link in the video description so you can check these out. And let me know in the comments what you think of these pliers. Have you tried out these Channellocks? What's your experience been with smaller Lineman pliers? And please remember to like and subscribe. Those actions help me to continue to bring content to you here on the Project Pine Hills channel. And with that said, I'll catch you in the next video.